President Trump signs executive orders establishing a digital currency reserve and opening national forests for logging. The Department of Education could be on the chopping block next, and House Democrats continue to embrace questionable opposition strategies. I'm Tony Kinnett from the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Friday, March 7th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order opening up U.S. national forests for logging. This is developing amid the president's Commerce and Treasury teams wading through construction material tariffs and reciprocal tariffs with nations like Canada.
Tremendous tariff on lumber and things as such, and yet we don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber. So what I'm doing is I'll be signing an executive order freeing up our forests so that we're allowed to take down trees and make a lot of money and then reharvest trees. Also, we're cutting fire divides. A fire divide is a 50-yard to 70-yard swath where the trees can't, it's long enough so trees don't burn forever until you can get them out. And those trees can be sold and made a lot of money with. But we'll be doing that. We don't need trees from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. So where we can be self-sustaining, which is in most things. Look, we have more oil and gas than anybody. Our forests are massive forests. We're just not allowed to use them because of the environmental lunatics that stopped us. So I'm going to be freeing that up very shortly so that we don't have to go to other countries to buy lumber. Why should we be buying lumber from other countries, paying tariffs, paying big prices, extraordinary prices, and we have lumber. We have the best lumber. Go ahead.
In fulfillment of a particularly large campaign promise, the president also signed an executive order establishing both a federal Bitcoin reserve and a U.S. digital asset stockpile.
Today we're signing, this is very historic, an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile. This is a promise that you made throughout the campaign, and today we're keeping that promise. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin that the federal government already owns, so it won't cost taxpayers a dime. This is like a digital Fort Knox for digital gold. And premature sales of Bitcoin over the past years cost American taxpayers over $17 billion in lost value because we didn't have a long-term strategy.
Right.
Now we do. So.
And this is something you believe in fully?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
And the whole community believes in it.
Very good. And I made the promise, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk really briefly about how this would work. So there would be an initial stockpile from seized assets that the United States already has. The government already holds significant amounts of Bitcoin, estimated at between 198 to 207,000 Bitcoin, which if you peg it at the price today, which wouldn't be quite feasible in a large lump sum like this, at about $87,500 per Bitcoin, that puts the United States' current holdings of Bitcoin at about $18 to $19 billion worth of the digital currency. These were acquired through various law enforcement actions like criminal forfeitures. These both include the criminal forfeitures of individuals who were arrested for various racketeering schemes, drug sales, sex trafficking, things like that, all the way up to massive dark web projects in which large marketplaces of these services were seized, and a lot of Bitcoin wallets, a digital text file in which certain blockchain elements of the currency are stored, were seized by the U.S. government or cracked by the United States Security Services. So this reserve could function fairly similarly to a U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, where assets are held for strategic or economic purposes and potentially sold during specific conditions. Now, Trump has suggested it could bolster U.S. economic dominance, help us compete with nations like China in the crypto space, and even help reduce the national debt, which at $36 trillion, I'm not quite sure how $18 to $19 billion is going to make a considerable dent, but that's what the President of the United States has said. In this executive order, the President of the United States included 3 additional cryptocurrencies that would be added to this strategic crypto reserve. These include XRP, SOL, and ADA. Meanwhile, Trump has a couple of executive orders coming down the pike that are ruffling a couple of feathers. Trump has been rumored to be preparing an executive order abolishing the Department of Education, or at least severely limiting or reducing the size and scope of the department. Now, it's important to remember there was an Office of Education before the Department of Education was established during the Carter administration. In previous years, the Office of Education was to collect certain education statistics from the various states and commonwealths here in the USA and would then report on those statistics to the president. Now the Department of Education is an abomination. It has not, by any available metric, improved anything in the American education system other than the total number of students enrolled in public schools. That is the only number, perhaps other than the number of illiterate students, the Department of Education has increased. But that hasn't stopped senators like Chuck Schumer from losing their mind and suggesting very hyperbolic things of which there really isn't any evidence for. He posted yesterday, if Donald Trump abolishes the Department of Education, it would be one of the most destructive and devastating steps he's ever taken. The main victims of this decision? American children. Democrats will do everything we can to stop this and protect education. There is no evidence to support that the abolition of the Federal Department of Education would negatively impact American students. While the Trump administration is moving forward with all due speed, the House Democrats are struggling to form any kind of an opposition whatsoever. In fact, they seem to be sliding backward. So just a few days ago, during Trump's State of the Union-like address, Representative Al Green was removed by the Sergeant-at-Arms under the order of Speaker Mike Johnson after Green stood up, started shaking his cane, and yelling at the President of the United States about cutting Medicare.
Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order.
Today, Representative Al Green was censured by the House of Representatives in a 224 to 198 vote, with 10 Democrats joining all of the Republicans in the House to vote in favor of censuring Green. 2 Democrats voted present, and the rest voted against the measure. Here's the weird part. During Speaker Mike Johnson's read of the whole vote and censure, House Democrats broke out in protest by singing.
The House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
House Democrat leadership is struggling in a slightly different way. Hakeem Jeffries was unable to answer a question about why the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats either voted against or didn't vote in favor of a bill protecting women from men in women's sports and locker rooms.
I want to ask about California Governor Gavin Newsom's comments saying that Democrats were in the wrong for allowing transgender athletes to compete in female and girls sports. What is your response to that after Democrats had opposed the women and girls in sports?
I haven't seen his comments. What Democrats opposed was unleashing sexual predators on girls throughout the United States of America.
That's not the only awkward moment on media. Representative Jasmine Crockett accused Republicans of wanting to put Black Americans back in the fields.
And as they have decided to go after immigrants and things like that, and they've said, oh, they taking your black jobs. They taking your black jobs. Not really. They are obviously jobs that they want us to go back to, such as work in the fields, all right? Those immigrants that come into our country, they work the fields, something that we ain't done in a long time. And clearly, he is trying to make us go back to the fields.
And Crockett didn't stop there. Jasmine Crockett and other Democrat congresswomen were mocked nationally for posting a video praising various personal qualities about themselves set to a meme trend, which mimics the character selection screen in the popular Nintendo fighting game Super Smash Bros. It was really weird, and they got dragged over the coals for it. Fantastic spending of taxpayer money. There is developing news on the tariff and stock market fronts, as well as Europe deciding how much it actually cares about Ukraine. But those headlines have likely already changed by the time you're catching this. So before you leave, head down to the description and click the link to make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast, and join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll dig through those messes together. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.